Say hello to the Porsche 718 Cayman T. Based on the entry-level Cayman, it's aimed at people who really love driving. The engine is the same 2-litre turbocharged flat-4 you'll find in a Bogo Cayman. It produces 296 bhp and 280 pounds-foot. A 6-speed manual is standard, but you can also specify PDK. With the manual box, it'll do 0 to 62 in 5.1 seconds and 171 miles per hour flat out. The T weighs the same 1,350 kilograms as the standard Cayman, but at 51,145 pounds, it's 8,200 pounds more expensive. Within the cabin, it gets an Alcantara trimmed steering wheel, fabric door pulls, and if you really want to suffer for a cause, no stereo or infotainment. You can have that stuff left in for no extra cost. Outside, you'll see Cayman T graphics, 20-inch wheels and grey mirror caps. But the really important stuff is found under the skin. Over and above a basic Cayman, the T gets Porsche torque vectoring with a limited slip differential, active engine mounts, Sport Chrono with a customizable driving mode, and Porsche active suspension management, which incorporates adapted dampers and a 20mm suspension drop. That bit's important. Now, here's the thing. You can spec most of that stuff on a Cayman. If you go into a dealership and say, okay, I just want a 2-litre Cayman, but I want PTV, and I want PASM, and I want all the other bits and pieces, you can do it. You can have all that stuff. The whole point about this car is that you get it all cheaper. That's what it's all about, really. It's a bit like the 911 GTS and the Cayman GTS that we've already seen. They cherry pick the best bits from the options list, throw them at the car, and then you get it at a cheaper price, so you get better value. The same deal applies here. If you were to go into a dealership and chuck all this stuff, all this kit at a normal Cayman, you would end up paying more than you pay for this car. The other important detail is that 20mm chassis drop. So you can have Porsche active suspension management on a normal Cayman. It gets quite complicated here. But then you only get a 10mm suspension drop. With the T, with the Cayman T, you get a 20mm suspension drop. Whew, okay, so that means that on the 20-inch wheels, it looks much more aggressive. It looks like it's squat, it's really hunkered down to the ground. And that 20mm suspension drop also means that the car feels quite different when you start driving it along a windy road. So let's talk about what's good about this Cayman T as a driver's car. The whole point about this car is that it should appeal to people who really love driving, who are interested in the finer points of driving. So we're on the perfect road to put that theory to the test. Lovely and twisty, quite narrow. This is the kind of road where you need to have faith in the car. You need to trust the car that you're driving. So we're in Sport Plus. We've got a fantastic manual gearbox, stubby little lever, tight, short throw, beautiful to stir the gearbox. And I'm using the blipper on the downshift at the moment. So I'm not heel and towing, it just means you get the perfect rev match every time. As we say with Porsches all the time, all the controls are beautifully weighted and so well matched to one another. That's what Porsche do really well. So just operating this car, just even driving slowly along a road like this one, it feels fantastic. Beautiful little steering wheel, and there's just no slack in the steering at all. It's so intuitive. You put the car exactly where you want it, perfect weight as well. And then you've got all that usual Cayman stuff that we just adore about these cars, the balance, the chassis balance. The moment you turn into a corner, you've got a really good, resilient front end that bites really hard on the way into a bend. And then as soon as you're through that entry phase, the car loads up both axles and it feels beautifully balanced. That gives you tons of confidence in it. That applies to the normal Cayman. So what am I getting here that I don't in the normal Cayman? Well, with that 20mm suspension drop, it feels more urgent. It feels sharper, more responsive. It's such a stable platform. The control, the body control, the wheel control, both fantastic. So to drive it along a twisty road like this one, chassis-wise, I'm not sure I can really criticize it, to be honest. Maybe it could be grippier, maybe it could be a little bit more aggressive, maybe it could be whatever else. But all of that stuff will come with the GT4. We have to remember, this is not that car. So we still want a good amount of residual comfort. I was driving it on the motorway this morning. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it's civilized. But then to be able to hammer it along a road like this one, and for it to be as agile and as responsive as it is, fantastic. It really is superb to drive along here. And we've got the differential as well. Bone dry roads at the moment, and it's warm. And yes, the engine has got a lot of torque, but it's so rare that you feel like you're leaning on the differential on the road in these conditions. On track, different matter. In the wet, different matter. You'd be using it all the time. But on a day like this, on a road like this, you could get away without a differential. When you start throwing the car around a little bit more, it'll be more faithful, more controllable, and that differential will come into its own. Shall we talk about the bit that's not so good? It's the engine, I'm afraid. It's the engine. So we've got a 4-cylinder Boxer, single turbo, 300 horsepower. It's plenty quick enough. Through the mid-range, really strong. It needs 3,000 RPM before it does anything. So let's have a look. We've got second gear, 2,000 RPM, foot down, nothing, nothing, nothing. 2,800 RPM, it starts going. That's quite a long way up the rev range, really. But I'm willing to put up with that because while it might not have a really strong and responsive bottom end, the top end is good. It does keep pulling. Not as well as, perhaps not as well as the 2.5 that you get in the S, but for a turbo engine, it does keep pulling up to 7,000 RPM. And so it's worth chasing the red line. In lots of turbo cars, you just shift up at 5,500 RPM to get back into the torque. In this one, you do at least chase it. Throttle response, really good. As soon as you're through 4,000 RPM, the throttle response is fantastic. It's just the sound. It's just the sound. Let's try it out. So, first gear, second gear, foot down. Oh, what can we say? What can we say about the sound? Sadly, the engine just sounds gruff, it sounds rough, it sounds slightly clattery. So, although you stretch the engine out all the way because it's got good power delivery, good energy all the way to the top, you don't ever feel like wringing it out because it just doesn't sound nice. Got a sports exhaust, that's with noisy mode on, and it's no better in quiet mode. That's a big problem, really, and I can understand why lots of people would be put off the car as a whole because of the soundtrack, and I think a lot of people have been. Does it ruin the driving experience? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But it's such a pity. So you can split the Cayman T into two parts. The chassis is near enough flawless. This car is brilliant to drive. But while the engine is responsive and powerful, it just doesn't sound as tuneful as you'd hope for a £50,000 sports car. Crucially though, the Cayman T does have a distinct character compared to a basic Cayman, and if you're really into the subject matter, it does actually represent good value. It's only a few £100 cheaper than a Cayman S, but once you spec that car up to the same level, you'd be spending far more money. In summary then, well, the 718 Cayman T is the car to buy while you're saving up for the 911 GT3 that you really want.